You can see I'm joined now by the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Let's get back to the top stories of the day. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So talk to us about what got you particularly exercised yesterday in Parliament and relating to the Sentencing Council.
Well, the Sentencing Council published guidelines which we uncovered, which showed that they were going to make changes to the way in which our courts operate, which is going to make it less likely for some groups to get a custodial sentence than others. So if you're a woman, if you're trans, if you're neurodiverse, if you're an ethnic minority, if you are from a minority faith group, which presumably means anyone who isn't Christian, then you would have a pre-sentencing report commissioned by a judge, which historically has meant that you tended to get a less strict sentence, less likely for it to be a custodial sentence. To me, this seems like blatant bias, particularly against Christians and against straight white men. And in a time when many people feel that there is creeping two-tier justice in this country, this seems only to confirm it and will be very corrosive to public trust and confidence in the criminal justice system.
Your focus of criticism yesterday appeared to me to be against the Justice Secretary and against the government. Having seen their response, having considered the genuine independence of the Sentencing Council, do you withdraw or alter where the focus of your criticism is?
No. I mean, I think the Sentencing Council itself was wrong, and it's deeply concerning that they produced these guidelines. But the Justice Secretary is represented at the Sentencing Council, and I've read the minutes at the very meeting at which these guidelines were signed off, and Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary's representative, was there. No objections were raised. So either this was the policy of the Justice Secretary, she's changed her mind, but this was her policy, or she was asleep at the wheel and was not in command of her own department when one of her most senior civil servants was sat around the very table at which these guidelines were produced. I would hope that if I was Justice Secretary and my officials were sat around the table, I would be instructing them to block this in any way that's possible.
Well, let's focus on the Justice Secretary first, because she said explicitly the Sentencing Council is entirely independent. Today's updated guidelines do not represent my views or the views of the government. She goes on to say, as someone who's from an ethnic minority background myself, I did not stand for any differential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind. So, I mean, is that sufficient for you to establish quite clearly what her view is, as opposed to the view of the Sentencing Council?
Well, she didn't block these. What did her representative say at the meeting? As far as we can tell, absolutely nothing, approved these new guidelines. What is she going to do about it now? She said she's going to write a letter to the Sentencing Council.
But do you believe that statement yesterday? Because this is important as to whether the claim of two-tier justice is a legitimate label for the Justice Secretary and the government, or for some other error that might have emerged.
Well, look, I don't know. I prefer to treat people's actions rather than their words. You know, I do know that earlier last year, you saw the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, describing people who spoke about a two-tier justice system as conspiracy theorists. You saw the Prime Minister sneering at people who had those fears. And now here, in black and white, you see the policy of the Sentencing Council creating a two-tier system in this respect. And that's deeply worrying because we believe in the rule of law. And at the heart of the rule of law is equality of treatment under the law, so that you and I are treated exactly the same as someone of different skin colour, different faith, different part of the country. We don't want to live in a country where people are being treated differently because of the colour of their skin or the faith that they abide by.
I guess there's a difference. You know, the Sentencing Council is independent. It has its members, and the government gets a representative to observe the meeting. And obviously, what's captured in the minutes, the absence of something doesn't guarantee that an objection.
Well, we don't know, do we? We don't know that. What I do know is when the first draft of these guidelines came out, the then Conservative Justice Secretary read them, said that they were ridiculous and patronising. These go much, much further because those ones merely said that a judge may require one of these reports to be written. These require the judge to commission one in every case for these groups. Shabana Mahmood, when I raised this in the House of Commons yesterday, didn't seem to even know about it. So what is going on at the Ministry of Justice?
And reporting this morning by Mari Aurora does suggest that her representative didn't feed back this detail to the Justice Secretary, which, as you point out, is revealing itself. The question is, what should be done next? And as a former Justice Secretary, your view on this is particularly insightful, but presumably you still think the Sentencing Council should be entirely independent and separate from the government so that we have that separation of powers, or not?
I think we need to consider that. I don't think that it is wise to have organisations, whether it's the Sentencing Council or others, where there is so little accountability to ministers. So I think we should consider how this operates. The main thing that needs to happen now is the Sentencing Council has got to change its approach. I want to see these guidelines changed before they're implemented. If they are not willing to change, then we're going to have to change the law to stop this.
But how does that get enforced as a former Justice Secretary?
Well, I wasn't a Justice Secretary, actually. I've served in other government departments, but never in the Ministry of Justice. But I appreciate the point that you're making. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, says she's written to the Sentencing Council. They have to change these guidelines. Now, if they are not willing to do so, then we're going to have to change the law. There is a bill going through Parliament now with respect to crime and the criminal justice system. That's a perfect opportunity to do so. And that will have to change the way in which the Sentencing Council operates to create greater accountability. So if it decides to do something which is frankly ludicrous and offensive like this, then there is an ability for a minister to step in and do it. But I do think that Shabana Mahmood has questions to answer here, because why did her representative not take issue at this? Why did she have so little grip on her department that she didn't understand what was happening? Because this, as you've seen, this is a major, major scandal. You know, it's the front page of every newspaper in this country this morning. People are rightly angry about this because they worry that it's very corrosive to trust in the system. And if you're Lord Chancellor responsible for the rule of law and you don't know about something like this, then you're not doing your job.
I guess the final question I had on all this is, it seems you seem to be the one making all of the headlines, headway for your party. Do you think you would be doing a better job as leader if you'd won?
No. Look, I'm just doing my job. My job is to hold the government to account, particularly in the area of the justice system, and that's what I've done in the last few days, and I know my colleagues are doing exactly the same, and Kemi Badenoch, as our leader, is working extremely hard, holding Labour to account. You've seen that in recent weeks, where she pushed Keir Starmer to hold an inquiry into grooming gangs, not the full national one we wanted, but nonetheless a good step in the right direction. She exposed the failures of Labour's education policy, which is leading to changes in the schools bill that's going through Parliament at the moment. Time and again, she's successfully holding the Labour Party to account, and that's what we all need to do in opposition.
Robert Jenrick, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.